Welcome back for Module 9, everyone. We're on our second to last week here at Wexford with our Lifestyle Wellness Coaching course. And we've got a few items to clean up and to become more proficient on, let's just say. This particular week's module is a little bit different in that we have typically followed the modules as they're presented in your book. However, depending on which edition of the textbook you've purchased, Chapter 9, or what would be Module 9, is really nothing more than coaching dialogue. Whereas the new version kind of addresses that by making it a little bit more about the skills of being in communication with our clients. So Module 9 will actually expand upon that communication as a backbone for how we influence change with clients, all right? So we're gonna be once again revisiting the contents of feedback, and more specifically a type of feedback that we can use with clients called a reflection. So we'll learn about what reflections are, what types of reflections are available for us to use, and ways that we can use them in conversation with clients, all right? So now the first thing that I want to point out is that we do have 6 types of reflections, and you're going to know these very well by the time we wrap up. But one sort of underlying reflection is the quick reflection, where we will typically have something in our mind that we're repeating back to someone when they're telling us a story, and we'll say, oh, okay, I see, or I get that, oh, is that right? That's a quick reflection. It's not meant to do anything but acknowledge that something's been heard, but it's not specific, all right? But the first type of reflection that we're going to really talk about is the simple reflection, and in this way, the coach is doing nothing more than restating what the client has said. So let's look at an example here. We see both a coach and client, and on the right, our client is saying, losing weight is hard for me, but I really want to do it. And then on the left, our coach is replying with a, well, you really want to lose weight, even though you know it will be difficult. This is a statement made from the client, and this is a simple reflection provided back by the coach. Next up, I want you to think a little bit critically about what you're about to see, or maybe what you might hear, and the differences presented here. We have client A who is saying, losing weight is hard for me, but I really want to do it. So think about what your response would be. Just like the first or previous coach said, it sounds like you're willing to do the work even though it will be hard for you to lose weight. That's one thing. But then we have client B who's essentially saying the same thing but in a different way, but it makes it so much more challenging for the coach to respond in a positive way. But we have to be able to do that. So the client says, I really want to lose weight, but it's so hard for me. So it's not as easy for us to say, it sounds like you know that it's going to be really hard for you, but you want to lose the weight. This could be an indicator of where this client is along that continuum, whereas client A, or this subject, is very ready to, it seems, take action on losing weight. So we have to look at or understand the different ways that people speak and what's truly being meant as they talk to us and explain their goals or motives or their vision. Then we've got the double-sided reflection, and this one's a little bit more tricky, and in fact we saw elements of the double-sided reflection in the past example where the client is typically going to present one thing and then maybe in the same sentence, conversation, or in the same week contradict themselves with something else or different elements that are not consistent with the original statement made. And again, we talked about this as part of confrontation, and not that we want to call out our client, but we want to observe and recognize differences that might show incongruencies in terms of what our client explains to us as part of their experience, all right? So in this way, we have a double-sided reflection here as an example being the coach and client. On the right, our coach is acknowledging what's being said by the client, which is that I really want to lose weight, but it's so hard for me. On the other side, the coach's response. On one hand, you want to lose the weight, but on the other hand, you're concerned about how hard it will be. This is a two-sided reflection, all right? Next up, we've got a clarification type reflection where we're asking the client to make sure that we've got it right. So we're saying things like, all right, if I'm hearing you correctly, you feel like it's going to be just too difficult for you to lose the weight. Or something else that clarifies what's being stated to us, where we can respond by saying, let me backtrack and summarize what you're saying so that I know I understand you correctly, and then say, do I understand you correctly? The client will then at this point have a chance to clarify with you if what you're saying back to them is not exactly what they meant or what they stated. All right, so you're confirming with the client what you hear them saying, all right? Then we have the summarizing reflection, and here basically you're taking maybe a collective group of ideas or elements and putting it all together, and you're summing it all up for the client. And in this example, we're saying, so you're ready to lose weight and you're aware of all the challenges and you believe that exercise is probably going to be the most difficult thing for you. That's summarizing all of the objections or experiences or statements that are coming from our client. Next up, we have a metaphor reflection, which is really looking at a way to almost use vision or imagery to help a client see something in a different light or from a different perspective. So in this way, we're using the rocky cliff metaphor, where we're saying that it's like you're standing at the bottom of a rugged cliff with jagged edges, and you can see up to the top, but you're wondering how you could get around all those sharp obstacles and what happens if you fall. So we're using a little bit of imagery. Lastly, we have the meta view, and this one's actually quite powerful, as you can imagine, and it's also a summary reflection in many ways, but it's presenting the big picture with a different perspective. Like, it looks like you're looking at that mountain and you're looking up and thinking, how would it be to be on top of that mountain? And then you get up to the top of the mountain one day and you look down and you see all the things that you were right in the middle of, but you didn't see until you had a bird's eye view. Using a meta view reflection is really important as a tool for each coach to be able to use with their client in a way that helps them summarize everything that's being explained, and not just so that the client knows that they've been heard, but they also know everything that's on the table up for consideration or to be addressed. And so in this way, we sometimes have to use or rely on using imagery or visualization. So you'll see terms like looking down from a mountain or a bird's eye view or an aerial view. Either way, we're connecting some sort of vision or image to provide perspective, which is what makes the meta view part of reflection unique for the perspective aspect of it. So that is sort of a summary on different reflections that we can use as coaches and that we can definitely use to improve and hone our communication skills with our client. So that is it for Module 9, and I want to remind each of you that your second project, your written paper on a pre-contemplative client, is due in terms of it being a dialogue between yourself and either an imagined client or one that you're actually working with in the pre-contemplative stage. That is due to me by the end of this week, and also to remind each of you that your final is upcoming and to please prepare for that.